Coming up on Arirang News, with civilian and military drills underway in South Korea, President Moon Jae-in urges his government to make sure national security is airtight, despite the more peaceful mood on the peninsula. The U.S. decides not to label China a currency manipulator, but on the watch list with China is South Korea, meaning Washington will be watching Seoul carefully. And South Korea's fertility rate was down again in March compared to a year earlier. The number of births down too, as measures apparently fail to turn around this demographic slide. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to our afternoon broadcast. I'm Devin Whiting. President Moon says South Korea needs to beef up its self-defense capabilities while still pursuing peace in the region. In a National Security Council meeting, he also stressed the significance of the inaugural Ulji Taeguk drills, which started Monday. Shin Se-min has the details.
President Moon Jae-in calling on South Korea to beef up its self-defense capabilities while still pursuing peace in the region. During a National Security Council meeting at the Blue House on Wednesday, President Moon said there should be no crack in national security despite the ongoing peace drive.
앞으로도 우리에게 선택권이 있는 한 평화를 향한 여정을 멈추지 않을 것입니다. 어떠한 어려움도 극복하고 새로운 한반도 시대를 반드시 열어나갈 것입니다.
The South Korean leader also expressed gratitude to his North Korean and U.S. counterparts for easing military tensions in the region. The president also touched on the OPCON, or Operational Control Transition, from Washington to Seoul when speaking about the week-long inaugural civilian military exercises dubbed the Ulji Taeguk drills currently underway.
을지 연습과 태극 연습을 처음으로 통합하여 실시하는 이번 연습을 향후 전시작전권 전환에 대비하고 자주국방 역량을 국군이 강화하는 계기로 삼아야 할 것입니다.
A South Korean general is set to lead joint military drills with the U.S. in August to test Seoul's readiness for wartime OPCON transfer. This, according to ROK U.S. Combined Forces Command and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The president also said the civilian government exercise reflects a broader spectrum on national security, including non-military threats like natural disasters and terrorism. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
President Moon has slammed the main opposition party for defending the lawmaker who leaked a recent phone conversation he had with U.S. President Donald Trump. In a weekly cabinet meeting, President Moon said there is no room for excuses and urged the Liberty Korea party to show they care about basic common sense. A diplomat working at the South Korean embassy in Washington disclosed details of the phone conversation between the two presidents to a Liberty Korea party lawmaker who used the information to criticize the Moon administration's diplomacy. The diplomat is facing disciplinary measures at the foreign ministry as well as a criminal probe. President Trump's national security advisor, John Bolton, has said there's no doubt North Korea's recent short-range missile launches violated UN resolutions. But there he appears to differ with Trump. Adding, it seems, to the confusion, the State Department says all of North Korea's weapons of mass destruction are violations. Our Kim Hyo-sun looks at the mixed messages out of Washington.
The U.S. State Department has confirmed the entirety of North Korea's WMD program is in conflict with UN Security Council resolutions. Addressing questions on the North's firing of short-range projectiles on May 9th, State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortagus also stressed that Washington is focused on continuing negotiations with the regime to bring a peaceful end to the North's WMD program. The remarks come as she had been asked to clarify the State Department's position after President Trump appeared to have contradicted his national security advisor over the North's latest launch. During his joint press conference with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo on Monday, Trump downplayed the firing, saying the North's leader wanted to, quote, get attention. An expert says President Trump is sending out two different messages to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
I think what Trump is trying to do is two things. The first thing is to signal to Kim that diplomacy is still in play, that he still wants to negotiate, and I think he still wants to have a third summit. But at the same time, he's also saying to Kim that short-range ballistic missile tests are not going to dethrone that diplomacy.
As President Trump has also expressed optimism for future dialogue with Kim Jong-un, there's hope the two could meet soon for what would be their third summit. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
In other news, the Korean capital, Seoul, is offering its facilities, like the subway, for use as test beds for innovative technology, with hopes of making it one of the world's top cities for startups. Kan Hyung-woo reports.
The Seoul metropolitan government says it's going to invest $126 million through 2023 to support over 1,000 companies to boost innovative technology development. With the project Testbeds Seoul, the city announced on Monday that it will provide its subways, roads, and bridges to evaluate innovative companies' technology. Seoul will kick off its project this year by investing some $8 million to test a number of technologies developed by 50 companies. Starting June 1st, firms will be able to submit their applications online, and the result will be posted within the next 8 weeks. Companies can apply for 2 types of test beds. They will either receive financial support from the Seoul metropolitan government or be provided with test spots, including City Hall, the City Hospital, and underground markets, where companies will be allowed to test their prototypes and services for up to a year. Seoul will issue performance certificates to products with proven safety and function. The city is going to raise its budget limit to $16,000 to purchase innovative technology, and it will introduce new policies next year to encourage its sub-agencies and departments to buy innovative products. Planning to establish the Seoul Business Agency Testbed Consortium in July to support companies, Seoul is expected to hold a testbed exhibition to promote innovative products in September, while organizing a startup pitching day every month. Kan Hyung-woo, Arirang News.
The U.S. has just released a report on currencies, and South Korea is on the watch list as a possible currency manipulator, which means the U.S. is going to keep a close eye on South Korea's currency practices and macroeconomic policies. Our Ko Jun-hee has this report.
The Trump administration has decided to keep South Korea on its monitoring list for currency manipulation. According to the Treasury Department's report released on Tuesday, 9 countries, including China, are on the monitoring list. The previous report had 6 nations on the watch list. The report aims to identify potentially unfair currency practices which could harm American workers and businesses. Countries that meet 2 of the 3 criteria are placed on the watch list. The revised criteria include a trade surplus of at least $20 billion with the U.S., a current account surplus that is at least 2% of GDP, and persistent intervention in foreign exchange markets. Although Korea met only one of the criteria this time, news reports say the country was still on the list because Seoul met 2 of the 3 criteria last October. Generally, the U.S. needs to see improvements for at least a year before it removes countries from the watch list. The Treasury Department welcomed Korea's public report in March on its foreign exchange intervention. The report emphasized it would remove South Korea from the watch list if conditions remain the same at the time of its next report. Washington has not designated a major trade country a currency manipulator since 1994. If a country is labeled as a currency manipulator, this could lead to trade sanctions imposed by the U.S. The Trump administration's decision not to label China a currency manipulator this time has prevented trade tensions from escalating. However, the report says it will carefully monitor developments surrounding the exchange rate issue, saying that the renminbi depreciated by 3.8% against the dollar during the second half of 2018. Ko Jun-hee, Arirang News.
Yesterday, the government revoked the license for a gene therapy treatment called Invosa, sending the stock price of the companies that developed and produced it plunging by the daily limit. Shares of the manufacturer Colon Life Science are back on the market, but its subsidiary, which developed the treatment, is still suspended. Yoon Jung-min has the latest.
The Korea Exchange said it will continue suspending trading for Colon Tissue Gene until it finds it appropriate to consider listing the company again. On Tuesday, the trading for both Colon Tissue Gene and Colon Life Science was halted after the government canceled the license of their gene therapy drug Invosa for mislabeling a cell ingredient. Manufacturer Kolong Life Science even faces criminal charges after the investigation revealed the gene therapy treatment used kidney cells, not cartilage cells. Kolong Life Science resumed trading on Wednesday, but its stock price plunged by more than 20% in the first 2 hours of trading. Bioindustry pioneer Kolong is facing its worst crisis since it was founded 62 years ago. The government is considering taking back funding worth more than $6.8 million, which manufacturer Kolong Life Science has received since 2015. Some 3,700 people are reported to have used the drug, and many fear whether the drug could cause them harm. 244 patients have filed a lawsuit worth more than $2 million against Kolong Life Science.
The pain in my legs didn't get any better before or after the medication. It's rather more uncomfortable because I have to see a doctor and get other treatments.
Kolong Life Science, however, said they did not manipulate or cover up anything, although there was some data lacking when the drug was under its approval review. The company added it will further analyze the cell ingredient and cooperate with the Drug Safety Ministry. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
It's time now for an in-depth look at the market action here in Korea and around the world. And for that, I'm joined on the line by Dr. Hwang Se-eun, Research Fellow at the Korea Capital Market Institute. Dr. Hwang, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for inviting me today.
So the U.S.-China trade war continues to weigh on Wall Street, apparently. Markets reopened on Tuesday after a holiday. The Nasdaq down around 0.4%. The S&P down more than double that. Take us through today's trade.
U.S. stocks fell to the lowest since March as a rally in 10-year treasuries rekindled concern that a key recession signal has started to flash warnings amid what could be a protracted trade dispute with China. Stalled talks in the U.S.-China trade war and escalating tensions have soured sentiment for risk assets. That's driven sovereign bonds higher and pushed global stocks towards their first monthly decline of year 2019. With the Federal Reserve reiterating last week that it remains fully in patience mode, investors have little reason to bid stocks higher. Asian shares stumbled on Wednesday and global bonds rallied as investors fretted over the outlook for world growth. Japan's Nikkei faltered 1.21%, while South Korea's Kospi was 1.25% lower than the previous session. In contrast, China's Shanghai Composite rose 0.25% today.
Now, exchange rates, which have been affected by the U.S.-China tensions, the Treasury Department just released its report, and it has perhaps surprisingly decided not to label China a currency manipulator. China is on the watch list, though. How have the markets responded?
The Trump administration again refrained from labeling China a currency manipulator on Tuesday, a decision that leaves one of the president's campaign promises unfulfilled, but avoids further escalation in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. Impact from the currency debate to the stock market is not quite sizable so far. Beyond the currency debate, trade dispute is still the largest battlefield of the global stock markets. The fact that China wasn't labeled a currency manipulator suggests the two nations are continuing their dialogue. However, this doesn't mean markets should be optimistic. Even after the report was released, the local currency kept its losing momentum. The local currency was trading at 1,195 won against the U.S. dollar, up 5.51 from the previous session's close on risk-off sentiment. The Korean won had lost 4.6% against the greenback since April.
Right now, bringing it back home here for a bit, the Korean government taxes the buying and selling of stocks regardless of whether the investor made money or not. This transaction tax is going to be lowered effective tomorrow, May 30th, by 0.05%. So on the Kospi, it'll be 0.1%. Will this have the desired effect of stimulating the stock market?
The Korean government will begin to lower the tax rate on securities transactions by 0.05 percentage point from June in an apparent move to stimulate the local stock market. The transaction tax is imposed regardless of whether an investor logs a profit or loss, which has angered investors who suffered heavy losses last year amid sluggish stock markets. The cut in the transaction tax is expected to help increase stock trading and improve stock market valuation. Last year, the government's tax revenue from stock transactions amounted to a record 6.2 trillion won, up 38.4% from the previous year. This implies that the local stock market will be able to retain as much as 1 trillion won per year from now on. If so, it is highly likely that the capital inflow to the stock market and trading activities will increase.
And we'll see what happens with that in the next couple of weeks. Well, Dr. Huang, that's where we'll have to leave it today. We appreciate your insights. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
It seems the U.S.-China trade war is weighing on South Korean companies, with their business outlook falling for this month. But things were a little different for manufacturing companies. Park Hee-jun has more.
Business sentiment among South Korean companies has dropped for the first time in 3 months. According to the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the sentiment index for all industries recorded 73, a point down from the previous month. A figure under 100 means there are more pessimists than optimists about local business conditions. The fall is largely attributed to the escalating trade tensions between the U.S. and China that's eroding confidence in the economy. The number is expected to drop further by 4 points to 73 in June. The outlook for South Korea's manufacturing sector edged up a point from the previous month to 76, the fourth monthly increase in a row. That's because figures for electronics companies jumped 9 points thanks to higher price competitiveness driven by the won-dollar exchange rate and rising demand for smartphones. But it's still below the long-term average of 79, and the number is forecast to fall a point in June. The sentiment index for non-manufacturing companies, however, fell 3 points to 71. That's largely due to decreased demand for construction engineering, pulling down the science and technology sector by 11 points to 69. Real estate business sentiment also slumped 10 points to 61. To spur economic vitality, President Moon Jae-in is emphasizing the need to boost corporate investments. While being briefed on the economic situation by Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi on Tuesday, the president called on the National Assembly to work to pass the supplementary budget bill so the funds can be used to shore up the economy. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Since December 2015, the number of births in Korea has been falling on year every month, and that trend continued in March. The fertility rate for March also fell compared to the previous year. Kim Hae-sung reports.
The number of births in South Korea fell 9.7% on year in March. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, there were 27,000 births recorded in March this year, down from 30,000 tallied in the same month of 2018. This is the lowest number of newborns in the month of March since Statistics Korea began compiling the data on a monthly basis in 1981. As for the first quarter, the total fertility rate, the average number of children a woman bears in her lifetime, was at 1.01, down 0.07 from the first quarter of 2018. The fertility rate has continued to slide in South Korea, with the rate hitting a record low of 0.98 last year. That's much lower than the replacement level of 2.1 that would keep South Korea's population stable at around 50 million. Korea is also the only country in the OECD that has a total fertility rate below 1, much lower than the OECD average of 1.68. Statistics Korea attributed the decline in childbirths to the falling number of marriages and the falling number of women aged between 30 and 34. The number of marriages dropped near 11% on year to 59,000 in the first quarter, while the number of divorces jumped 5% to 27,000. The number of deaths in the first quarter dropped 8% on year to around 75,000. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
In Korea, the first members of Generation Z are entering adulthood as the first generation to have had digital technology at their fingertips their whole lives. For them, the boundary is even less clear between the digital and physical worlds, and as adults, that means they're changing the culture. Here's our Oh Soo-young with the first of a three-part series on Generation Z.
When a picture's worth 1,000 words, an emoji or a GIF is more than enough to get the message across. At least that's the case for Generation Z, young people in their teens and early 20s born after the mid-1990s.
Sometimes you could have a whole conversation just using emojis or GIFs. I don't really make phone calls anymore. I feel more comfortable messaging or video calling my friends.
Born in the age of internet and raised with social media, members of Generation Z are seen as digital natives who are more used to texting and sharing images than using elaborate sentences. This is especially true in Korea, where over 20 million people, nearly half the population, have purchased emojis for messaging.
A few years ago, teens made up 16% of purchases on KakaoTalk, but that has now doubled. We're working on more specific expressions and diverse, amusing scenarios that young people can identify with.
Sociologists say emojis are becoming emotional agents for Generation Z, conveying their feelings in the best way they know how. Communicating through video has also become second nature. Generation Z captures short and snappy clips on the spot to share with their friends, and a growing number prefer to spend time together screen to screen rather than face to face using video apps.
We enable natural video chatting for all situations. When you can't use audio, for instance, you can look at your friend while typing out caption-like text and also send video texts. Around 20,000 people use that app daily, usually for more than an hour in the evening.
Researchers say it's a generation shift that's happening globally.
They've had cameras with them their whole lives, basically, and they're also instantly connected. So they never wait to tell someone, something that's happened, that they tell them instantly. They often prefer visual over text because they have become experts at just scrolling and scanning text rather than reading things slowly and properly. For them, their virtual online world is just as real, it's just as significant, and it's where they hang out just as much as they do in the physical world.
As Generation Z begins entering the workforce, researchers expect their growing social presence to change communication as we know it, interacting and expressing themselves through their native language of pixels. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
For the first time, foreign visitors to South Korea are saying they enjoyed sampling the local cuisine even more than the shopping, which had long been the biggest draw. Our Kim Da-mi takes a look at what's so special about Korean street food.
While most foreign visitors come to South Korea for the shopping, more and more are citing the local food as the most enjoyable part of their trip. In fact, in 2018, 30% of foreign tourists said Korean food was the most satisfying part of their trip. Myeongdong, the top destination for foreign visitors, is the go-to spot for street food, especially the classics like Korean rice cake, tteokbokki, and fried dumplings.
Great food. It's so simple. It's very clean and very tasty. A bit spicy, but really great.
Yeah, so everyone comes here for shopping and for food. My friend was coming for shopping, I was coming for food.
Korean hot dogs are another beloved street snack for locals and foreigners alike. They're similar to American corn dogs, except some are coated in sugar and are oftentimes full of cheese. From traditional food like pancakes called jeon to more modern fare like fried chicken, 닭강정, Korean street food has something to appeal to everyone's tastes. Most of these street food dishes are affordable even for those on tight budgets, with prices starting out at around 3,000 won or around $3.
We have nothing like this where we come from. We come from Sweden. Yeah, it was 5,000 per dish, which seems like reasonable. It seems fair, and I think it's affordable, and it's definitely worth it. If you're in Korea, you gotta come here.
There are also options that can cost up to $15, such as dishes like grilled lobster with cheese. However, cash is a must as street food stalls rarely have car processing machines on hand. And later at night, street food turns into the perfect side dish to have with some drinks at these Korean street bars called 포장마차. Enjoying the cozy and relaxing atmosphere at 종로 3가 may be the perfect way to end the day or experience some night culture here in South Korea. 김다미, 아리랑 뉴스.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
To learn more about the economic issues in Korea and around the world, tune into Arirang TV's new program, The Chamber.